Well, it's most likely focusing on you, because let's be real, you're the star. Who's the star of the show? It's you, it's you, it's you. Does anyone else's dog have this, she's got an extra little bit of cushioning? Can you see it? Just a little extra meat just on top of her dome piece to protect that big juicy brain you got going on. Hi kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza. That was Winnie. You'll never guess where cheese is. Cheese. Forever in the cheese spot. Always observing, never participating. Per usual, she's done with us. All right, we are here today. One, I should mention, if my voice sounds a little, I don't even know what the word for it is, goopy. I got the flu, the real one, tested positive. Long story short, ended up in the emergency room where they're like, why are you here? And I'm like, I don't want to be here, but I was told to come here. Anyways, I was really sick. So it's been a while since I recorded. If I'm extra weird, that's why. But also if my voice sounds strange, I just feel like there is a leftover congestion situation happening. I hope you're doing well out there. I hope you haven't gotten the flu because it sounds like everybody's had it. We are here today to talk about books. We're going to do a recent reads. Why? Because if I wait too long, it's too many books and it's overwhelming. So I like to do this while it's a little bit short. Problem being, I've waited a little too long and it's getting hard for me to remember what some of these books were about. We're going to try our best. It would have helped if I actually pulled them off the shelf too. What am I if not prepared, you know? The first book we're going to talk about is Carmilla, and she's super shiny. So we'll try our best to not blind you. This is a piece of classic Gothic literature. This is touted as the inspiration for all vampire stories that followed after it, including the big one. Yeah, that one, the Dracula one. This is also a sapphic story. It's teensy-tiny, and I felt like I needed to read this. If only because I've read a lot of books that were inspired by this. So I needed to consume the original story. So I decided to pick up Carmilla, which is, I believe, in the public domain. So there's lots of versions of it. I've got this version. It's got a cool shiny cover. This is the story of Laura, and she is a young woman who lives in a very secluded estate. When one day a carriage shows up, there's some sort of accident. Another young woman is dropped on their doorstep, and suspicious and dark things start happening. It's fast, it's gothic, it's dark, it's spooky ooky, and it basically is the birthplace of a lot of the traditional characteristics of what we consider a vampire. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. In reading this, I can definitely see how it's gone on to inspire a lot of things. This is a good jumping off point, but I didn't think this was bombastic and it's not a new favorite, but I'm glad I read it. It's quick and easy, it's gothic, and it's vampires, and that's all you really need to know about it. The next book we're going to talk about is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and this, I believe, was absolutely everywhere. I'm going to blame it on BookTok because I think that was their doing, but this was touted as cozy Gilmore Girl small town fall romance. I mean, it says Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and the author's pen name is Laurie Gilmore, I believe. I mean, they were going for cozy small towns romance. Come check it out. But they were like, also, it's got spice, which BookTok loves spice. If you're looking for spice, BookTok is going to deliver. I picked this up because I was like, sure, let's see. I like small town romances. I like pumpkin spice things. I'm nothing if not basic. And so I decided to just see what everybody was talking about. This is the story of Jeannie, and she has kind of purchased a small town cafe, the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, in this super small town where everybody knows everybody's business, and she's the new girl in town. Not only does she now run the cafe, but she lives upstairs. And something has been going on with the cafe. Things have been breaking or turning up missing, little mishaps and things are going wrong. And Jeannie is like, is it a ghost? Is someone after me? What's going on? When she encounters Logan, who is a local who is supposed to come off kind of grumpy to Jeannie's sunshininess, but he's been in a relationship with an out-of-towner before and it didn't end well, so he's reluctant to act upon the feelings he has for this new girl in town, Jeannie. Here's what I'll say about this. This is such a formulaic, general public type romance. Yes, there is spice. There is spice that happens, but it's not over the top spice. It's not some new spice that you've never experienced before. I feel like someone consumed hundreds of thousands of small town romances and literally just pick and chose different tropes from all of them and threw them in the soup together. Like, this is not any new flavor. There's nothing wrong with that if you like the comfort of like a Hallmark Christmas movie, how you can literally turn any single one of them on at any point, beginning, middle, or end, and you kind of know how the story beat for beat is going to go, and they're gonna end up together in the end. It's kind of something you can throw on in the background and not really pay attention to. I like to call this folding laundry romance, where if you're listening to it as an audiobook or you're like cleaning out your fridge or just doing some menial task, you don't really need to pay attention to either thing you're doing, listening to the romance or folding all of your clothes. That's what this was. It didn't reinvent the wheel. I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of chemistry. I wasn't like kicking my feet and giggling at the fun things these people were having banter back and forth about. It was just so run of the mill, which is totally fine, but it just kind of wasn't much of anything. I think I gave it a 3, and that's kind of being kind, but it didn't make me feel much of anything at all. And we're going to talk about the second book I read in this series, which I really can say I don't know why I continued on, since I had a mediocre time with the first book, but I thought maybe it's just a first book problem. Maybe once the author gets into their stride and we start really engaging with this small town, I'll find the charm in it, right? So even though I didn't read these back to back, let's talk about the next one I read, and that is the Cinnamon Bun Bookshop. This is another store in this small town. We have Hazel, who runs this Cinnamon Bun bookstore, which apparently has changed names quite a few times, and its newest iteration is the Cinnamon Bun Bookshop. Sidebar asterisk. The cover makes it look autumnal, and you've got to be kidding me, the Cinnamon Bun Bookshop, that definitely sounds like cozy fall winter vibes. No, this is taking place in the summer. This takes place in the summer. The cover is a lie. Hazel is coming up on a big birthday, feeling like she's missing out on life, when she starts finding clues in her bookstore about romances that are kind of trying to get her out of her shell. She enlists a local, I believe his name was Noah, who obviously has some kind of crush on Hazel, and these two go on these adventures that she keeps finding clues about in her bookstore. Someone's trying to get Hazel out of her shell. This was so... it was just not good. It was so boring. It was so run of the mill. You've read this story a million times, and every other version was better. It was just so average. It was below average. Nothing was really exciting, new. The banter wasn't fun. Even the twist of it being like the bookstore is kind of giving us the clues, it just felt like something that had been done 1,000 times. We were just chewing up someone else's old gum. I wanted you to be grossed out by my metaphor. I really started to dislike this after this, because it was just such a sanitized, and they're just kind of throwing things at you to reel you in. They're like, small town bookstore, you'll like that. Cinnamon buns, who doesn't like cinnamon buns? Fall romance, it's not, but you'll think it is. Like, they just keep trying to get you to read this when there's nothing about this that makes it unique and original. I really think you should skip this entire series, and I refuse to continue on. That is where I'm going to stop with Laurie Gilmore's Gilmore Girl-ish. They're not Gilmore Girl-ish at all. Small town romance books that are so lackluster. They will be forgotten about in a year or two. No one will ever recommend these after BookTok has lost its momentum with the first one. The next book we're going to talk about is completely different. It by Stephen King. This ginormous brick of a book was the longest book I actually read last year, and was me continuing my journey through Stephen King's catalog of horrors and atrocities. He is a prolific writer, and I wanted to get on some of that action. This is not something that I think you should pick up unless you really, really want to. The first, I'm going to say 2/3 of this book were really fun, and I got really into it, and then the last third goes off the rails in the worst way possible, to the point where I was skipping whole sections because I didn't want that mess in my brain. There's this whole kind of running joke that Stephen King doesn't know how to end books, and good Lord, did he screw the pooch on this one. If you don't know what It Is About by Stephen King, that is honestly highly, highly impressive that you have lived under that rock for as long as you have. Let me tell you what it's about. This is a story of a group of friends. We are taking place in 2 timelines with them. One when they are young children on the cusp of adulthood, teenagerdom, I should actually say, living in a small town in Maine that is just kind of cursed, for lack of a better way of putting it, and they are encountering some supreme paranormal evil nonsense, which they refer to as it. We are also following them as full-blown adults years later when they are having to return to the small town to once again take it on because they promised they would as children. So you are going back and forth between these 2 timelines, them as kids encountering it, them coming back to Derry, and as adults encountering it. And then, fighting it. It has a lot of issues. Not It the Clown. It, the book, has a lot of issues. There are a lot of things that I think in the beginning you can kind of easily gloss over as it being a product of its time, being a product of the fact that Stephen King was on a lot of cocaine while he was writing this. But once you get to the end and things go off the rails as much as they do in the not fun way that they do, it's kind of almost a disappointment. I can say I'm proud of myself that I read this many pages, but I didn't really end up liking it. The next book we're going to talk about is Barbie and the Villain. This was available on Kindle Unlimited and sounded like a fun, good time. Full disclosure, I DNF'd this, but if I make it past the 50% mark, I count it in my book count because I've already read a lot of pages before I put that bad boy down. I gave it a fair enough try. Barbie and the Villain is a story about Barbara, also known as Barbie, and she is a super girly kind of girl, but she's also a super fan of this book series. In this book series, which is a fantasy book series, there is a Sir something or other, some good guy prince who ends up with some good guy princess, and they save the realm from the super bad guys. Through circumstances, Barbie gets sucked into another world along with her sweet, precious little Pomeranian, and they end up in this fantasy world that Barbie is a super fan of. Like, she's a cosplay, goes to all of the different fandom, whatever cons that have anything to do with this. Barbie ends up in the world that she is obsessed with. The problem being is that when Barbie gets there, she realizes her hero and the world's heroes, the 2 good guys, Sir What's-His-Face and Princess Happy... I was going to say Happy Pants. I don't know why. We're going to call her Princess Happy Pants. I don't need to remember these characters' names. But the good guys are actually not that good of guys. And they almost immediately try and take advantage of the situation that Barbie is in and sacrifice her to someone. They end up trying to kidnap her dog too, which was really, honestly, the part that I was the most invested in was this tiny little powder puff of a dog. When Barbie ends up escaping and having to flee with the bad guy from all of her favorite stories. And maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all. This felt like this author had watched both The Suicide Squad and Barbie the movie and was a huge fan of Margot Robbie, which, to be fair, we're all a huge fan of Margot Robbie. But they were like, I want to write Margot Robbie fanfic, but I would like to combine those 2 characters. So not only is she this super pink, slightly ditzy, but with a heart of gold of Barbie, but she's also slightly psychotic, like Harley Quinn, and makes violent swings in mood. It's kind of kooky and over the top and was basically Harley Quinn and Barbie turned into the Barbie of this book and went on an adventure with all of these fantasy people that I really could care less about. It wasn't fun, it wasn't funny, and the whiplash I was getting, Barbie and Harley Quinn are not the same character. And when you try and turn them into the same person, it just doesn't work. Margot Robbie is fantastic at her job and makes us think that one person could embody all of those traits, but it just kind of gives you a lot of whiplash. I ended up stopping this at the 50% mark because it wasn't fun and I wasn't having a good time. I do not recommend Barbie and the Villain. The next book I picked up after that was Bull Moon Rising, and this is Ruby Dixon's most recent traditionally published romance. Ruby Dixon is an author who has, I'm pretty sure, 5 million published works. Most of them are independently published and available on Kindle Unlimited and things like that, but she also sometimes traditionally publishes her works as well. If you are looking for top tier Ruby Dixon fantasy romance, you need to go read Bound to the Battle God. Super fun time, and honestly one of Ruby Dixon's longest books. Hang in there because it also doesn't start off bad, but it gets stronger as it goes along. I think you just gotta make it through the beginning where it's not nearly as good as it gets. Anyways, I picked this up because I'm a Ruby Dixon fan and I usually really enjoy her books. I ended up liking this fine. I think I just kind of had a little bit of a problem with our love interest, and so that's more of a me issue, not the book's issue. This is the story of Asbeth, and she is a young woman who grew up in a noble house, and she, in the beginning of this book, with one of her maids, who also just kind of happens to be her best friend, is traveling to a great big city in this world because she wants to join the Artificers Guild. She basically wants to be a learned woman. She's been learning in secret because it's just not something that women are allowed to do, but she's going to go join this guild for a multitude of reasons, some involving her family, some involving herself, but this is her lifelong dream and she's going to make it happen. When she gets there, she kind of gets laughed out of the room because girls don't do this kind of thing. This is boy stuff. And she is absolutely not taking that. She ends up kind of conning her way into one of the houses or the groups of people that are part of the Artificers Guild to start her training. She kind of gets into the misfit house. It's all the people that no one expects to make it all the way through training. And in order to get herself there and keep herself there, she has to do a fake marriage, but it's actually a real marriage. It's a marriage of convenience to one of the artificers. His name is Hawk. He is a minotaur. And that's kind of where my issue was. It wasn't necessarily with his character. He made a lot of sense. Ruby Dixon did a really good job, as she usually does, with creating a really fun world and giving you enough information to understand why everybody makes the choices they make. The magic systems of the world are usually pretty on the simple side, but there's a lot of thought put into them. They're never really hard to understand, yet they have enough depth for you to have a good time. The problem being our main character, Asbeth, is a human woman, and she is married to a minotaur, and she kisses him a lot. And all I could think is that she was kissing a cow. This is a me problem. If you are a monster romance person, and I have read my fair share of monster romances and really enjoyed them, unnecessary itching. Can we not move the camera just because our foot itches? I bet it doesn't even itch. I bet we just wanted mom to look at us, huh? I've read my fair share of monster romances, and for some reason, and I feel like this is with everyone, some things totally fine, completely okay, and some things just give you the ick, and kissing a cow gives me the ick. I could not get past him being a minotaur. It was like anytime there was any sort of kissing or any sort of like supposed to be romantic scene, I kept being like, but he's got a giant cow mouth. I will continue on with this series because I still thought it was funny and fun. The banter is fun. I liked the world. I liked the artificers and that they were in this city that was kind of built on the bones of these magic places. And so people were digging down into the ground trying to find artifacts of magic. It was really fun. Also, this book is really cute, but like our man's was a cow. And I couldn't get past her kissing a cow. And that's a me problem. If any of that sounds fun and you think you can get past kissing a cow, like, please pick this up. It was a fun ride and I really love Ruby Dixon books. I don't know why the cow thing was just a hurdle I could not get over. And the last book we are going to talk about is another fantasy romance from an author I've read from before. And I really didn't have a good time with her other book, but I picked this one up because it said it was true enemies to lovers. And I actually did really enjoy it. That is Amid the Clouds and Bones. And this is available on Kindle Unlimited. This is the story of Mildred, and she is the half-fae daughter of a royal and is basically set up in an arranged marriage with the fae son of a neighboring kingdom. These two are going to be wed to each other to form an alliance between these kingdoms because there are about 3 or 4 kingdoms that they're constantly in a state of turmoil. Everything is kind of just like teetering on the edge of war erupting. And so this is supposed to solidify a alliance between these two nations. Her being half fae, she is able to be married off to this fae prince. They meet as children. He is exactly how you think a snobby fae prince would act. He's full of himself, and he almost immediately does something really awful to her. At first, she's terrified of him. And I'm going to be real honest, there's a long period of this book where she is terrified of him. But her terror doesn't turn her into like a shrinking violet. She basically takes her terror and turns it into aggression. She's scared, so she's going to be on the offense. So these two, from the time they're children and they first meet each other, they hate each other and have to come together several times throughout their young adulthood and teenagerdom to meet each other as their kingdoms hammer out different whatevers, and they both, on separate occasions, almost kill each other. It is true hate, but there is something in this like hate there's a fine line between love and hate, and these two almost start teetering over that line pretty quickly. The marriage goes through as it should, and now our character Mildred, who her beloved husband calls Dread, is married into a fey court full of people who really don't respect her and don't want her there, to a man who she absolutely hates. It was really fun. It's very spicy, but I will warn you, there is almost a love triangle in this. I will say this is truly a book where I was not sure who Mildred was going to end up with throughout the story. You are kind of thrown for a loop a couple of times, and if that's not something you like, you're not going to like this. I was on the edge of my seat to see what everybody's motives were, who really was in it to get Mildred and who was in it to get whatever they were after. Mildred is not a shrinking flower. She does make mistakes, but she's trying to play it smart. She's not just a dummy. She's making these mistakes because she doesn't know what anybody's motives are, and she's just trying her best. It's spicy. It's got some dark parts, and it was definitely a wild ride. I had a really good time with this and was pleasantly surprised, seeing as how I hadn't liked books from this author before. But I did really enjoy Amid the Clouds and Bones, and I will definitely be picking more from this author in the future. That, kids, is where we are going to end this recent reads. That was plenty of books, and I'm tired of talking. And the dogs are all looking at me like they want to go O-U-T, but I'm not saying that word until we're doing it. It's really stinking cold outside, so I don't know why you guys want to go out there. I just said the word and Winnie's ears went straight up. But if you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there wherever you are, and I'd love to hear about them. And I'll see you next time. Hey, do you want to go outside?